Welcome, everyone.
Hi.
We're going to give it one more minute. Hi, Judy. Hi, Kari. Hi, Joyce. Hi, Kim. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Sashi. Hi, Janet. Hi, Sandy.
Hello there.
Hi, Fabio. This is Sashi. I attend the Harvard, artist talks that you do. So excited that you just took on the new job at the Greenwich House.
Oh, thank you, Sashi.
I really enjoyed the way you've conducted the series. It's really nice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Janet Koplos, are you in Minneapolis still, or are you back in New York?
Oh, in New York, in the Bronx.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Janet Koplos co-authored a textbook on the American craft movement, and you were also writing about American potters, weren't you?
Yep. A book that just came out October of 19, right before the pandemic. It's called What Makes a Potter, and it's a bunch of interviews, and they're wonderful interviews. You know, I'm not speaking for myself. I'm speaking for the people who talked and spoke really well. I recommend the book to everybody.
Fantastic. Maybe we could have a book talk and book signing at the Pottery at some point.
Actually, I did.
We did.
In January. It's the only place I got to have one. I thought all of last spring, you know, was going to be a book tour. Haha. You guys got an exclusive. That was it. I'll do it again if you want. I mean, it was fun.
Yeah, it was really lovely to hear some of the interviews. I thought it was a lot of fun. It's a great book too. Love it.
Thank you.
So, Caitlin, is Brian able to join? I don't see him.
No, he still isn't able to. I can't figure out what else to do. Let's see.
We're just having regular Friday COVID technology issue. You know how it goes. Welcome, Faye. I think people might be caught off guard when they're greeted in a Zoom environment. I don't mean to alarm anyone. Faye, you're on mute. Okay. Kari, are you in New York? Great space.
Palisades, which is near Nyack. Nyack is on the other side of the Hudson, 20 minutes from the George Washington Bridge.
Great. Yeah, near the Tappan Zee. Great. Judy, where are you?
I am on the lovely Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Close.
Very close. Sort of close.
You'll be able to come and take a class at the Pottery. Registration opens June 14th. or come visit the exhibition gallery by appointment. You can make an appointment on our website. I'm going to introduce our curator, gallery manager, Caitlin, but I wanted to just say thank you to Joyce for contributing these pots from the Allan Buitekant Collection. And I hope that Joyce is able to chime back in. She's Alan's widow. But Caitlin, I'll leave it to you. Caitlin McClure.
All right, thank you again, everyone, for joining us and for bearing with us through the technical issues. I'm Caitlin McClure. I'm the Gallery and Residency Manager at Greenwich House Pottery. And I'd like to reiterate that thanks that Fabio mentioned to Alan and especially to Judy for making this exhibition possible, and Judy for her continued support of Greenwich House Pottery in Alan's name. Just a quick bio about Brian Wright. On a personal note, so as I was going through Alan's scrapbook for these teapots, I kept noticing this name over and over again, Brian Wright. And I wanted to learn more about these teapots as I was getting the exhibition together. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to look up this Brian Wright and see if maybe he can tell me some information about these pots. And sure enough, he did. And I really appreciated all of his help. And we're excited to have him with us today to do a bit of a demonstration and talk to us more about Yixing teapots. A little bit about Brian is that he started importing tea from Taiwan in the mid-1990s, at first for himself and his friends, and then later for a wider audience. He was first exposed to loose leaf tea as a student in both Taiwan and mainland China, where he acquired his first teapot from factory number 1 in Yixing. Over the years, his collection of teapots and scope of imported teas has grown, but he continues to drink tea made in that first teapot. So a little bit about the timeline, now that I gave the bio, a little bit about the timeline of the exhibition today, or the opening today. We are going to have Brian do the demonstration, and after he does that, I will show an installation video of what the exhibition looks like in person, and then we'll open up for a Q&A in case anyone has questions for me or Brian, or for that matter, anyone else on the call. And then if people are interested, I will play the video again just so people can see, have one more look at the pots before it's all over. So if everyone just wants to stay on mute during the demo and through the video, then we can all unmute and talk and ask questions at the end. So without further ado, Brian, if you would like to please take it away for us.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for showing up on Friday, and I see some of you already have your tea out, which is great. It's kind of like tea happy hour here today. So I come to this sort of Yixing teapot world first as a tea drinker. So there's a couple things I'm not. I'm not a pottery expert. I'm not a potter. You guys seem to be off. Caitlin informs me most of you probably are. So you may know, have more experience with sort of the hands-on manufacture of these pieces, or how that would be done, or what that would feel like. In my case, I come at these as a tea drinker. So, you know, Yixing teapots really are, they're made to be used. They're made for tea brewing. And the design of these little pots actually goes back to about like the Ming Dynasty. And the reason that, pottery was made in Yixing before that time, but the important thing that happened around then is that loose leaf tea rather than powdered tea became the type of tea that was consumed. So, powdered tea is like what you think of like Japanese tea ceremony tea. You just powder in there and you whisk it and you make a froth and then you drink it. That was the tea of the Tang Dynasty. And that's the kind of tea that made it to those tea making techniques, and that style of tea is what informs the Japanese tea ceremony. Later on in China, loose leaf tea, the kind of loose leaf tea that we're familiar with now, was developed. And in order to brew that tea, the best way was really like a small teapot that you put a lot of leaves in, and you reinfuse those leaves. So there was already pieces were being made of this clay in Yixing, and I'll say something about the clay in a minute, but in any case, it was a logical choice for, nice teapots to brew your tea in. And so these small teapots became a thing. And loose leaf tea hasn't gone away, so the small teapots have not gone away either. The thing that has gone away over time is the source of the clay. So, it's a resource, an earth resource, so it's not unlimited. And unfortunately, like a lot of the new teapots that are available now, it's just not made like the old ones. And that's not for lack of trying or lack of skills. I mean, probably the hand skills have become better over time. But, and of course, firing and things like that become probably a bit more precise with different types of kilns and that sort of thing. But the original clay is very, very rare nowadays, such that in my own importing business, I used to import teapots from China, and I could tell people, hey, you should get one of these. They're inexpensive, they work great, they look better with use. They hold heat really well because they're very high fired, very dense, and they function great. Nowadays, the sort of teapots that you get, they cost more than they used to, but the blend of clay and the materials and things are not quite, they don't behave in the long term quite the same way as your average teapot used to. So I think that's one thing that makes this collection really special, is that Alan came to these teapots at a time when you could still get like a pretty nice teapot for, not that much money. So, he put together a collection that he used to make tea. And that kind of takes us to the next element of this, or next aspect of this whole teapot experience. And I'll start first with sort of the story that you hear, the old story that you hear about Yixing teapots. Oh, these things are great. You make tea in them, and you make the same tea in that same pot, and you do it over and over again. And then after a few years, or 10 years, or some period of time, you can just pour hot water in there and you pour it out and it tastes like tea. And so I can tell you that I have done that. I made the same tea in the same pot for 20 years. And it's this pot right here. It's my first pot ever that I made the Yixing Factory #1 from 1990. Was in the gift shop after a long bus ride and a long hike. And I made only one tea in this pot. And nowadays you put hot water and you pour it out, it still tastes like hot water. So that, I think, that story should not be taken literally. I think and over time I've thought like, okay, well, what is this? Is this just some made up story to sell teapots? Like, I don't think so. Because in my own experience, when you want to make a particular tea, so for example, this teapot, like, only ever had baozhong tea in it. Somebody comes over, I have nice baozhong tea that I want to make for somebody. I have a bunch of teapots I could choose from, but I reach for this one. Why is that? Because I feel like this one, the tea will come out better when I make it in this pot. Why? I mean, of course the teapot works great, but I think the real thing is the connection between the user and the pot and your own sort of habits. So the teapot, retains heat very well, pours nicely, empties at a certain rate. Your ability to assess how much tea is in there, has all been worked out. And the person using this pot knows all these parameters, can kind of feel it intuitively. So they don't screw it up when they make the tea. It's more consistent, it's better, and they're more reliable for that person. So to me, that's the real interpretation of that story, of the teapot, put water in it, it just comes out tea. Not quite so literal, but that interaction between the person using the pot and the pot, I think, is really special thing. And there's so many types of tea out there, and the teapots are so varied that somebody's choice for what they do says something about the individual too. So just to give you a sense of the range of teapots that are out there, this is the one Caitlin mentioned in the bio that I picked up first, my first ever teapot. And something about the squat shape I liked, and the sort of lotus, like the schematic lotus on the lid, I thought was cool. And I didn't know any more than that. I just thought it was cool. I kind of liked the color, and it seemed like a good size. I did know enough from some advice that, oh, if the lid opening is a little bit bigger, you can fit some bulkier tea leaves in there. So I thought, this will be good, because it won't matter if the tea's big or small, I can fit it in there. Because of course, when I bought it, I didn't have a particular tea in mind. This is a good example too of what they call the purple clay out of Yixing. It's not really purple. It's a little bit confusing. You know, you see the translation of purple, and it's like, purple looks kind of brown. But there's also a brown clay. So that's a good example. Also, same year, different factory down the block, actually, from number one. So this one is a bit more brown. Some people may still generically refer to this as purple clay, but to me, the purple clay is really sort of this dark brown. And it's not black, because there is a black clay too. There are also some shades of red. There's yellow. Here's a good example of a yellow one. And it's not uncommon for designs to get put on the side of the teapot, like some calligraphy or just inscribed. Sometimes it's inscribed, and sometimes it's inscribed and then blackened like this. The blackening, I think, it's not very complicated. You just kind of take calligraphy ink and rub it on there, you know, like a ink stone, and then like wipe it off, and then the ink stays in the carved out parts. There's also blue and green, which are a little bit less usual. And one clay that's kind of not really available anymore is this. This is a good example of it. It's called Juni Clay, which means it's like a one of the red clay variants. There's like sort of your plain red clay, and then there's your Juni Clay, and it's a little bit darker red, but the interesting characteristic of it is I think this comes from shrinking a little bit when it's fired. It gets kind of like these wrinkly, it looks wrinkly after the pot comes out. And from what I understand, that's not the case when you're using the clay. It says after firing. So there's a certain amount of shrinkage or something that creates this sort of wrinkly quality. So the wrinkly clay pots like that are quite unusual now, because there is no like commercially available Juni clay being made into teapots anymore. Okay, so that's what makes these teapots cool. They look good on their own, and there's also a variety of designs. Some are shaped like things, you know, like fruit or melons, or something like you know, sometimes you see like basket shaped ones. This one's kind of like a basket. Looks like bamboo wrapped with little nail heads in it, like it was some kind of basket form. And they're not all short and squat. I've been told that my preference is for short and squat teapots. Like, people come over that know teapots a little bit, and they look and see what I've got. And they're like, yeah, you like those little fat teapots. Like, well, yeah, maybe I do. But they're not all like that. There's different shapes. This one is a good example of what's called an overhead handle, a Teleon teapot, an overhead handle teapot. These obviously kind of hard to make because the handle can break off pretty easy, and in use it can break off. I bring this particular one out. I have some maybe better overhead handle pots, but this is one that goes back to the user experience that Alan bought for me. And he kept it for a little while, and then he called me up and he said, Brian, I gotta send this thing back. I don't like this pot. I said, dude, what do you mean you don't like this? Is the first teapot you've not liked as far as I knew. And he said, no, because when you pour it, he said, when you pour, it always comes out the lid here. It doesn't pour very well. He found it difficult to, just kind of like not pleasing to use. And that could be because the, tip of the spout's just a little bit higher than the inside rim of the lid. So when you tip it, a lot of tea comes out there. Of course, some people may not care about that, but other people do. And they like it when you can put your finger over the air hole in the spout and stop the pour and things like that. So, so I figured, you sent this one back. So I figured, well, now I got to keep this one just because the story is pretty good. And I always thought it was cute anyway, and I didn't have too many Teleon teapots. But I will admit, I don't often brew tea in this one for that very reason. Because when I go to grab this teapot, I'm like, hey, I'm going to have a sloppy pour. So there is something, the amount of use a particular teapot gets, really says a lot about the, functional qualities. So anyway, while I got you here, I thought I'd make a little bit of tea just to test drive, show you how these things function. So the reason the teapot's not very big is because the tea that you'll put in here usually gets infused multiple times. So sure, this is not a very big teapot, but you fill this up and empty it out 8 times, you've got kind of a lot of tea. So what you do is you put got my dry leaf tea in here, some tea guanyin from Taiwan, and my hot water is just off screen here, but basically you add hot water to it. I've got a very convenient electric hot water dispenser here, but anyway, you get hot water in there and pour it off. This very first pot, usually you don't drink it because now that's nothing to do with like the tea or the teapot or anything like that. It's simply that the leaves are rolled quite tightly. So you get better results if you just sort of get them wet once and let them open up, and then you brew to drink. That may not be true for every single tea, but it's true for most of the Taiwanese oolongs that are my sort of favorite. Okay, now comes the very pertinent step. So what do you do with that first infusion? Well, people habitually pour back over the teapot, and you can use it to warm your other utensils up. Say, oh, why pour it back over the teapot? You're just playing around. So, well, yeah, but not only that, but the reason the teapots get shinier with use is that they absorb some oils or something from the tea itself. And, so that'll happen from the inside out, but it takes a really long time. And there's some surfaces that obviously are not going to get hit from the inside out. So habitually you sort of pour some tea over the pot, and that accelerates this sort of development of a nice patina on the outside. And you pour it out. So this particular teapot has this kind of cool melon-shaped lid, but you can see there's right here where you put your finger on it, there's no hole. So it's like, well, where's the air hole? The air hole's like in the back of the handle here. So this one pours quite nicely, but stopping the pour by covering that little hole back there, to me, the lid is always too hot for that. So fortunately, this one pours nice, so you're just not going to stop the pour with this one. But that's a pertinent design feature, I think. Then let's get a little bit for the pot there, and then you drink your tea. And so this teacup is one of Alan's cups that I still like my special occasion little teacup. He made a lot of these, and he made them pretty big. They were like sort of, you know, kind of standard coffee mugs, no handle, but like a kind of a big handful of a cup, which I really liked in the wintertime. But I don't know, I don't remember it was him or me. I know I kind of advocated for it. He was like, oh, maybe I should make some smaller cups. I said, yes, please do, because I definitely want one. You know, I want it just like the big one, but I want it a little smaller, so it doesn't seem like half full after I fill it up with tea. And I don't remember what happened, but I think it was like maybe he had like some small quantity of a certain clay left. I figured he could make more cups out of it or something. There was like some practical decision in there. But anyway, he made a bunch of these, and I still keep one because, you know, good times. So, yeah, that's about what I've got. Like, just to reiterate, I think the user interaction with the piece is really the thing. There's something to do with the old clay. It's nice, it behaves like nicely with use, but that's the key, it's with use. It just sits on a shelf. It looks just the same as some brand new teapot that might have some toxic material mixed in the clay to get the color right. There have been scandals, you know, in the last couple of decades about, you know, toxic stuff in the teapot clay. But old ones didn't used to have to do that. It just came out of the ground good. So anyway, thank you all. Here's to Alan and a great collection. And I'm looking forward to seeing the video tour too, guys, because of course I've seen the pictures, but of course the video tour would be great. And if anyone has questions too that I can answer, happy to do so when Caitlin thinks it's a good time.
Thank you so much, Brian. I really appreciate your demonstration and also all of your help with this exhibition. Just as a reminder, everyone, we'll do the Q&A after the install video. But if you have questions and you're worried you're going to forget them before you get to ask them, go ahead and chat them over to me, and I'll make sure to read them out at the end if you don't remember to ask them in person. So right before we segue into the installation video, I want to give everyone more of a bio on Alan Buitekant and who he was. So Alan was born in the Bronx in New York City in 1933. He was one of a small group of art directors and writers at Doyle Dane Bernbach Agency in New York City, who revolutionized advertising in the 1960s and 70s. In addition to advertising, he was also a potter and a collector. He studied ceramics in the evenings at Parsons, at 92nd Street Y with Byron Temple, and at Greenwich House Pottery with Jim Crumrine, and at the Brooklyn Museum with Jolyn Hofstad. After his career as an art director ended, he retired to North Carolina and really pursued his ceramics. And so we are very lucky to continue to get support in Alan's name from Joyce Cunningham. And something to note about this exhibition is all these teapots were donated to the pottery with the intention that we sell them and raise money for the pottery. So all the funds go to the pottery. So if anyone is hankering for a teapot at the end of this, I will make sure to include the link to the online store. And we, of course, appreciate all of your support. Without further ado, I'm going to segue into the install video, and we can get looking at these amazing teapots. Okay, so that was the install video. Now let's open it up for Q&A. If anyone has any questions or just wants to say something, please, everyone should feel free to unmute and we can talk about the teapots.
I'll just say that it's a really beautiful collection, and the exhibit is really, really nice. Caitlin shared the scrapbook with me a little bit earlier, and I've been dying to actually, you know, kind of as with anything ceramic, you want to get your hands on it and kind of feel the pots and use them, you know. So it's unfortunately you won't be able to use all of them, but I'm also a collector and real fan of Yixing pots, as well as pretty much any teapot. So I actually got to Greenwich House because of tea, you know, and teaware myself. So, you know, that's actually great to see the gallery and the pottery with this exhibit. I really love it. So thank you. And thank you to Alan. Wish I'd known him.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you for also your assistance. I know I asked you lots of questions as well.
Wish I could have helped more, but.
Lou is also here, and Lou also was helpful to me. I asked many people many questions, and everyone was very, very helpful.
Caitlin, maybe I'll jump in. Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I was going to ask Brian for, you know, I'm familiar with the notion of seasoning the pots. If you feel if that's an important thing to do, and if like you buy one of these pots and you want to use it for a different tea than what Alan used it for, you know, how do you re-season it? I mean, that may be too technical. Maybe other people aren't interested, but it'd be
no, that's a really important question, actually, because the seasoning that you do with a teapot generally is just you boil it for a while. You put it in a pot of boiling water and you just cook it for a bit. That will get like any sort of stray gunk out of the pot. Like if it's been on a dusty shelf or in someone's basement for a long time or something, you might want to cook it. But of course, you don't have to do that. And there's nothing keeping you from just trying it first to make some tea in it and see. And if the tea tastes funky, you know, maybe you want to cook the pot. You know, you can do that test if you want. The other thing that people do when they cook the pot is often not just cook it in plain water, but put like some old tea leaves in there and cook it. That will often make the teapot look a little better because the tea, you know, you kind of have this dense tea cooking mixture going on, and it will absorb a little something from that and look better when it comes out in most cases. In the case of some like highly commercial pots, there may be some coating on the outside too to make them look better, and cooking them can get rid of that. In the case of Alan's pots, I think, you know, maybe a little plain water cook and then try it out. And then if you feel like you need to enhance that more, you know, you can always cold soak it in some tea or, you know, cook it in your own tea of choice. But my own habit with these teapots is that some pots I have that are dedicated to a particular tea. Like this one, I only ever make Tiaguani in, and this one I only ever make Baodong in. This one, I just make whatever I want in this one. And this one I'm the third owner that I know of. This was the guy that I learned about tea from is like my teacher's pot. He learned from his uncle. His uncle gave him this pot. He gave me this pot. So now I'm the caretaker of this pot. And nobody remembers. I don't know. He's like, what kind of tea did your uncle make in this? I don't remember. Okay, well, what kind of tea did you make in it? Well, whatever I felt like. So this is one that I've had good results anyway with just changing it around. Of course, the thing you want to steer clear of is something like maybe pu'er tea definitely needs a dedicated pot, or really fragrant teas like scented teas, like some jasmine tea or something like that. You need to have that in its own pot. That's why in Alan's collection, you see the one for the Earl Grey, that big frog and lotus one. That one, I don't know if he put loose Earl Grey in there or if he put it in some kind of bag and dangled it in there or whatever, but that was one he just figured he could heat it up, cook it for a long time, and just not worry about it. But for Earl Grey, because it's got that oil of bergamot in it, you definitely need your need a dedicated pot. So if you like that teapot and you expect to change it to another tea, you may have to cook it a bit. Yeah. The other thing, I won't go on too long, but the other thing, the outside of the pot sometimes can develop an uneven patina. There are techniques to go back to the original, like brand new sort of unvarnished look of the pot. The simplest one is actually the magic eraser. You can take because the magic eraser, you can sit there and rub it on the pot and it will basically buff off the whatever accumulated shine is on that pot. You know, people don't like to talk about this because it sounds like very kind of not particularly artistic, sounds a little coarse, but it works. You know, you're dealing with a really hard material. Magic eraser works okay. The other thing that people that will work is to soak it in a mild bleach solution. But that's really a last resort kind of thing. Most people think, but if you have a teapot that really wasn't cared for well and the patina is just a nightmare and you don't think it's really worth that much or whatever, and you're just like, you know, I really want to see what's going on with this thing, the bleach will also take any shine off the pot. I think I did that once with a pot that had some kind of weird coating on the outside, and I was just like, no, the boiling wasn't doing it, so go for the bleach. But definitely last resort.
Brian, is there any understanding of the volume of the teapot? And that's one question. And my second question is, do you use any filter inside like a metal?
That is a great question. So the volume really depends on how much tea you want to end up with when you're done. For me, what this one's about, I want to just made tea in here. This one's about 150, 160 milliliters. I find this is a good size for up to like 3 people. Maybe 4 if you get like small teacups, you know, smaller. You know, a lot of it depends on the size of the cups. You get more people, you get smaller cups, you know, you can get away with the smaller pot. If it's just me with a little cup and making some tea, I have actually a collection of 100 milliliter teapots that I've accumulated. So I can make 1 pour, 1 cup, and skip this, you know, intermediate server, you know, step. As far as the inside goes, most of these pots have like an integrated strainer, like leading to the spout, there's like an array of small holes. So you don't have to worry about like your tea shooting out the spout. Other ones have like a straight hole, like right out the spout. And that may pour a little faster, but every now and again, you know, a leaf will get stuck up there. But you just got to keep like a little stick or something, a bamboo something around, or you know, half of a skewer, you know, bamboo skewer or something, just around to clean the spout out for those teapots that get stuck during use. For those kind of pots, there is a little device you can get. It's like a little metal strainer with a couple little stainless steel strainer with a couple little wires on it that you can put inside that will sort of emulate the effect of the multi-hole passage to the spout. But you know, so if you really like everything about that teapot except for that fact that your leaf gets stuck up there every now and again, there is a solution for that. But most of them, it's multi-hole.
I have a question. Why not use bright young green tea?
Oh, in these pots?
Yeah.
So the convention for greener tea usually is that you need a lower temperature of water to brew them in. So often it's not essential that you have a something like this where heat retention is really its strong point. So it's kind of not necessary. There's no reason you couldn't. You could definitely do it, but often it's it's just more convenient to use something else. The other thing I have heard from people occasionally, and this is not very specific advice, just kind of a conventional wisdom thing, is that, oh, with tea that's got like really delicate flavors and stuff like that, you should use a non-porous container to brew it in, because it holds the aromas better. So, that's pretty unscientific, but yeah.
Yeah, the delicateness of the tea the taste would change.
Well, you get more out. Yeah, it tastes better if you brew it in a non-porous container, because I guess then all the flavor elements get into your cup and nothing's like lost into the teapot.
So this was part of my question. I'm newish to pottery. Are these completely, they're bisqued and then fired? What is there a glaze on them?
There is no glaze. They are just clay and fired. They are unglazed. All Yixing pots are unglazed clay.
Would this be like earthenware?
It is. It's just really dense earthenware.
What do you mean dense?
The firing temperature is like super high. It's like 1200. And the stuff is, I guess that's high, right? I'm told that's high.
It's much higher than that. I think
really?
Where you have to have it at a low heat, but I'm acting like I'm somebody come.
You guys know the pottery stuff, right? So I just know that the clay's dense. The firing temperature is like 1000, 1200 usually, and there is definitely no glaze. It's just assembled, and then I think that it has to dry a little bit, and then you fire it.
I saw the exhibit today, and I was thoroughly blown away. I was like, oh my God. And I go back to when I first started seeing these types of pots, and I never knew, go to Chinatown, you see them, you're like, oh, it's so wonderful. But you're thinking, well, I don't know what's wonderful and what's not, because here it's not that expensive, but they seem so good. And the way they were grouped were so thoughtful and just, it was, and I just wondered, did Alan, and you knew him, how did he show his collection? How did he present it? And how did
full disclosure, I never met Alan face to face. We talked on the phone for an infinite amount of time, but I never actually set foot in his house and saw his pots. A lot of his pots I sold to him, so I'm aware of how he got them. I'm not sure actually, but I think when he moved to North Carolina, he had some well lit natural lighting sort of set up to display his pots, because I believe that house that he moved to, he sort of designed it, and by then he already had a collection of all kind of stuff. So I think that was built around the display. I'm sure he would approve of the Greenwich House display, because to me that looks pretty good.
So I must just ask, go one more route. If you could just sort of lend some sense to, I don't know how to ask this, so maybe somebody should, maybe I'll find another way to ask it. So sorry, thank you.
Okay, and I think Lou had a question about the comments.
Oh, thanks, Brian.
Hey,
thanks
sure.
for your demonstration. I was just about to jump in to kind of just say, because I grew up drinking loose leaf teas. I grew up in China, but I'm a tea lover, but I'm not, really knowing exact the steps. But I always really admire the tea drinking, and so thanks for demonstrating that part.
Sure.
Yeah, and also just from my own experience in terms of the tea drinking, in China, we always have this, just we wanted to wash the tea before drinking so that we don't drink the first round of the tea. I think that also kind of relate to what you were saying about boiling the tea leaves. And for certain, like a pu'er tea, they are condensed and tea leaves. So the or bricks tea, so they form into like a brick. Those type of tea tend to be boiled, and we also drink like in terms of the rounds, we drink 3 rounds, and we would not go more than that because the taste of it is disappearing. And I think for me to observe 2 different type of culture in terms of drinking tea is there is like a certain size of the teapot, and for like tea cups that we're drinking, it's tend to be smaller. But in American, people drink tea with mug. So then the tea leaves will stay in the pot for a long time. So the reason why we're drinking in a small cup is once the tea is, go through water and teapot, and they are being poured out into a sharing jar, and that jar will share into each individual small cups. And the small cups often has this volume in relation to the teapot size. So that's like a lot of like a design thinking, and also like Brian was saying, that the size of the teapot relate to how many people are drinking the tea. So I think that is just a little bit of my experience with the tea. And in terms of this Yixing teapot, I also, because I teach Chinese ceramics, and I also feel like I'm not like someone who can speak for it, but I just only know, like a little bit of why kind of like Yixing teapot is very like a special treasure in a way. That's like worth to collect is because of the material itself. Like Brian was saying, it's purple clay. It's not really purple color. It's just because in Chinese we call it zisha, that's purple sand. So this type of clay only can be found in Yixing. So that's why this thing, it has enough from the nature. So up to a certain point, it will just, it has its limitation. So it's in a way collectible. And in terms of the firing process, I think it is a very special clay that's being found, which, it had fired to, I saw one of the, it fired to 1200 Fahrenheit. So it's a fairly high temperature fire without any glaze. So it holds the water very tightly. And because of just clay itself, so you drink each tea, the teapot will absorb the taste of the tea. That's why, that's how I understand why Brian drinking, certain tea with certain teacups. And in that way, you kept the, purity of the tea taste. And that's just some of my idea that I want to share. Thanks.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it looks like we're just about out of time here. So I'm just going to say thank you again to everyone for attending, bearing with our Zoom issues at the beginning. And thanks especially to everyone who gave me various pieces of information about these teapots. And we're going to head out on the video. So I'm going to press play. We're going to watch that again. If you want to stick around and see those images again, please feel free. I will just close the Zoom at the end of the video. So thanks again, and let's take a look at the teapots one more time. Thanks again, everyone. Have a good night. Have a good weekend.
Thank you all.
Thank you.